But joining us right now live from Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, from the Philadelphia Inquirer, first time on the show, Jonathan Tannenwald. Jonathan, welcome.
Hello, Anthony. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Hey, the pleasure's all mine. I appreciate you making time on short notice, Jonathan. I wanted to pick your brain because you followed MLS like myself for a number of years. I'm not surprised if you started following it from the start like I did. And I wanted to talk to you about the growth of MLS, especially this year. We're starting to see this league really starting to take things very seriously in many areas. We heard now Howard Webb coming over to helping out in the ref department. We're starting to hear about more money being given to teams in different areas that they can use, on and on. Let's talk about it, Jonathan. What have you been impressed about that MLS has really taken the bull by the horns and said, hey, we need to improve in this area and that area to become a serious league?
Well, I'll tell you something I've been particularly impressed by in this offseason. A lot of us have said for a long time that if Major League Soccer wants to realize its goal of being the best league, certainly in CONCACAF, if not all of the Americans, then you've got to go out and sign the best players in CONCACAF and in the Americans. And we know they're not going to get Lionel Messi and Neymar, obviously. But this offseason, you've seen MLS teams go out and sign some of the top players in CONCACAF. Harold Cummings from Panama is one example. Albert Ellis going to Houston from the Honduran national team, I think, is a great example. It's been high time for MLS to finally do this. Look, we know that the David Villas and the Frank Lampards of the world sell the tickets and the jerseys and all of that, and yes, some of them make their teams better. But the guys who really make the teams better in a substantive way and raise the level of the league for everybody are these players from the CONCACAF nations that are now coming to MLS, and it's high time, in my opinion.
Well, let's talk about that. In the news this week, and it's getting hotter and hotter. Come the summer, it looks like either Atlanta, maybe TFC if they can figure it out, New York City FC, the Red Bulls, who knows? But it looks like someone's going to open up the vault for Chicharito, the Mexican national team player. I think this would be massive. I think this would be important. And I think this player would be such a key move for MLS to really show the world we are no longer the whipping boys. We want to play with the rest of the world.
They don't even have to show the rest of the world. All they have to show is Mexico. Look, if MLS becomes, certainly from a financial perspective, because that is where it's going to start, a marquee destination for top Mexican national team talent, and if they are convinced that the level of play is high enough to be able to sustain a starting place in the Mexican national team, that is going to be huge, and it will fill a lot of the stadiums, and it will sell a lot of jerseys, and all the TV contracts and everything else. Of all the teams you mentioned, oddly enough, you did not mention the one where I think he's going to land, and that is LAFC when they kick off in March of 2018. I would not be surprised if he is their big splash. Maybe he gets loaned somewhere for 6 months and then comes over to start preseason training in January or February of 2018 or something like that before LAFC gets going. I have said for a while now, there is one player more than any other on the entire planet that I would break the bank for if I was Major League Soccer, and it's not Lionel Messi, it's not Cristiano Ronaldo, it's not Zlatan Ibrahimovic. It is Javier Hernández because of the impact that he would have on this league in this continent. It looks now like it's getting closer to happening. I think Orlando had a shot at one point. Maybe it wasn't entirely going to get all the way there, but I think it is potentially closer now to happening than it's ever been.
And I think this is fantastic news for the league. It's fantastic news for all the people that have followed this league and been ridiculed in many, many ways, like myself and others out there for following this league. It's starting to grow up in many, many ways. We know Portland, Vancouver, Seattle, that Pacific Northwest, Jonathan, is lights out like a European atmosphere. It's wonderful. Montreal and TFC, the derby is unbelievable. We know that. New York City FC and the Red Bulls, on and on. MLS has got this down pat. They have really hit it out of the park with these type of derbies and these atmospheres. I think they're missing it in one area that I think they really start to, start losing in many people's eyes the seriousness of this league. It's the day. I think they need to centralize a specific day in 2018 and say, hey, all the games will be played on Saturday or Sunday and go from there. Your thoughts on that?
I'm against that, believe it or not, and here's why. I think your listeners know, those who follow me on Twitter, and you can ask the goalkeeper if you're interested, although I'll warn you that I do tweet a lot. Anthony, you know that there, name. Look, here's the problem. The national television time slots in the United States are simply not available on Saturdays because from August to December, college football rules the roost. And throughout the summer on Saturdays, there's baseball and there's golf, and then in the spring there's hockey and basketball. I mean, look, you're going to tell me that TFC in Montreal are going to play on a Saturday night during the hockey season and anybody's going to watch them? I don't think so. So to me, you know, the clubs want to play the games on Saturday nights because that's when the most people go to the stadiums and that's when they sell the most tickets. Okay, that's fine with me, but I think having the Friday night and Sunday night national TV games is the right way to do it because that is when you can get a little more of the attention on the higher profile networks down here like Fox Sports 1 and ESPN. I know that TSN and RDS and TVA in Canada are a little different, but I got to tell you, we know all the Impact games are going to be on TVA this year, and they've got the hockey rights. I think it could get a little disappointing, to say the least, when the Impact are playing on a Saturday night on TVA's second channel behind the Canadiens, and all of a sudden nobody's watching them.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. I'd still like them to eventually nail down a day. I'm against, you know, them playing through the winter months, as that was the talk not too long ago about, you know, getting normalized like they have in Europe and playing throughout. You just can't do it. It's impossible for many, many reasons, I believe. So I have no problems with that, with what MLS is doing. Let's tackle another thing that came out, I believe, yesterday or the day before when the Commissioner, Don Garber, was in Vancouver. I've said this time and time again. I got a lot of time for the Commissioner, Don Garber. I think he's done unbelievable job as the commissioner with expansion, with the players that have been brought over, with many, many different things. I think he has been fantastic. I support him, but I don't support in what he's done to the Canadian player. I went right at him. Before the Montreal and TFC playoff game here with Victor Montagliani, CONCACAF president, CSA president, when I asked him straight out, and he actually apologized after the MLS championship conference that we had there with the media. I asked him straight out, why now? Why now is that relationship taking place with the CSA and the Canadian players? Now we hear that the NASL has no problem making the Canadians domestics. And here's Don Garber saying, well, we're going to open up an office here in Canada. We're going to do more and more and more. I think it's a little bit too late, Jonathan.
I got a few thoughts on this. And your readers might have seen some of them. I'm going to repeat those and say a few more. Let's start with the NASL. Major League Soccer's premise is not per se that it is illegal for them to make Canadian players domestic. It is that they cannot, to their understanding of U.S. labor law, they cannot treat one class of foreign players differently from another class of foreign players. So if they treat Canadians as domestics, they open themselves up to the Jamaican Federation and the Costa Rican Federation and everybody else coming along and saying that we want the same treatment. I see that the NASL has done it. I see that the USL has done it. I know the USL has structured a little differently with the way their clubs are set up, with the way their ownership structures are, and I confess I don't know every detail about it. What I do know with the NASL is that I think they are taking a risk that their rule might get thrown out because a law is only as good as it's enforced. And I think MLS was kind of worried about it getting enforced on them. It seems to me that the NASL doesn't think they're going to get called on it. If they do, I'm not sure how long it'll last. Now, having said that, let's go to your conversation with Victor Montagliani, who I think could have solved this problem much earlier if he had really wanted to. And I must admit that I question a little bit just how important the deal it is for the power brokers in Canadian soccer. I know it is for some of the fans, but hear me out on this. On a number of occasions in recent years, the Canadian Soccer Association has been presented with opportunities to gain some leverage against MLS, especially when the television ratings have been high And above all, when the television contract with TSN expired and was being renegotiated, I thought there was an opportunity there to use the rights deal as leverage to get Canadian players treated the way the CSA wanted them to be. And with all due respect, it didn't happen.
Yeah, I hear you, Jonathan, and I agree to a certain extent. I just think he's doing all this now because he knows coming down the pipe sooner than later, I believe within the next 60 days, maybe less, maybe a little bit more, you're going to see an announcement about a new Canadian league based coast to coast with some big-time owners, not some guys that are just, millionaires. We're talking with a B, billionaires. And I think he's starting to understand now that, hey, Canada wants its own league. Canada is serious. And let's be honest, Jonathan, Vancouver, Montreal, and TFC have set records in attendance, in season ticket sales, in bringing over world-class players where a lot of the other American MLS teams have not.
Oh, and I think there's a lot of folks down here who look on with some envy at the Canadian clubs in that regard, and for good reason. But a lot of the people who I have talked to about the Canadians is domestics issue. And I think you will find, by the way, no small number of Americans who are not we are not down here objecting to the Canadian Premier League. The only question that we have is how exactly one gets away with presenting it as equal to MLS, because I can't really see it.
No, I'll tell you right now. I'll state it openly. As a fact, it will never be considered on, well, I shouldn't say never. I can never say never. But at the beginning, it cannot be considered at the same par as MLS.
But they're going to try to sell people on it being that.
No, I don't think so, Jonathan. I'm privy to a lot of conversations. I don't think so. I think that they're going to really go and attract the Canadian fan that wants to watch Canadian players mixed in with some real good world players that have come over to help grow the game in Canada. But I tell you this, Jonathan, we'll leave it at this. I believe we can have the discussion in 10 years, maybe a little less, that maybe, who knows, the Canadian Premier League can go toe-to-toe with MLS.
It would be wonderful for Canadian soccer if you're right. But I think what I have said many times, and I know you and I agree on this because you just said it, TFC and the Impact and the Whitecaps are popular in their markets. And I know that this offends a portion of the crowd, and we got a lot of the same problem with this down here in the United States. There's a portion of the crowd that loves the fact that soccer is the hipster thing, the exclusive thing, you know? They like it to be their little garage band. And then when it gets to be a big deal, they feel like it's not theirs anymore. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I think there's a little bit of that going on where the people think the CPL is going to be the hipster thing. I don't blame them, but I cannot get it out of my head that one of the biggest incentives to launch the CPL is that Canadians are not domestics in MLS, and that has been the fuel for the fire of so many things. And my response to that is, okay, if it matters that much to you, then put all your energy in fixing it. I don't think they've done that. And I will also say, I'd love to get your opinion on this, Anthony, because you know the youth development scene better than a lot of people, especially in Toronto. I think that within 3 to 4 years, much of this is going to be moot, because all these kids who are coming through the MLS academies are going to be domestics, and we saw that clause that they're going to welcome in also some other academies that are not of the MLS teams. If there's some big ones in there, like Sigma, for example, if Sigma's in that pot, look out. Because in 3 to 4 years, so many of these Canadian players are going to be domestics. It's going to hurt the guys who are sort of in the hole now, like Ledgerwood and Atiba Hutchinson, although I got to admit, I'm starting to get convinced if Vancouver or Toronto really wants Atiba Hutchinson that bad, we'll just pay him.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Absolutely. You make a lot of great points. I couldn't agree with you. I mean, these are things that, are being discussed continuously, daily. I know that for a fact. Jonathan, very quickly before we let you go, we really appreciate your time. I said it last year. I'll say it again this year. But I think this is the year that they finally break through. I think Chicago Fire will get in the playoffs. I think that they've done a lot of good things in the offseason. I love their coach. He joined us seconds after the trade. I think it's an important market for MLS. That is Chicago. But I also think that another market that needs to be, watched very carefully is that Columbus market and that Columbus team, because in attendance, they struggled. You need to get them going. We saw Philly get into the playoffs. I thought that was great. Your thoughts quickly.
Well, I think Philadelphia is going to be better this year. I really like the signings they've made. But the team that I am watching, and look, they're coming in with all guns blazing and all the pomp and circumstance. As much as I agree with you on Chicago, I think they've made some smart signings, especially at striker. The team for me to watch in the Eastern Conference is Atlanta United. And not just because of the big-name guys they've signed for a lot of money, but because of the young players out of their youth structure, so they sort of have one already. Their young players are going to be the difference makers this year, not just the big stars. And I think that Tata Martino's willingness to play guys like Andrew Carlton, there's one name you should definitely watch. Tata Martino's willingness to play the youngsters alongside the big names could be a game changer for the whole of MLS with what Atlanta United is going to do this year.
Outstanding. And I love hearing that. Jonathan, it was a pleasure having you on. Don't be a stranger. Love your work. Love what you tweet out. And you're always a guy that has always shown respect to Canadian players in the Canadian landscape, and we thank you for that. Again, thanks for your time, and keep up the great work at the Philadelphia Inquirer, my friend.
Thank you kindly, Anthony. I much appreciate it.